In a tense courtroom, the air is thick with anticipation as the defendant stands accused of a serious crime. Everyone's eyes are on the judge who is about to begin the trial. But suddenly, something unexpected happens. As the defendant speaks, the judge's face freezes. He seems lost in thought. Then his expression shifts. He recognizes the person standing before him. The defendant, looking nervous, glances at the judge, but the judge is distracted by something far more personal than the case at hand. This isn't just another courtroom drama. It's a story about a judge who's forced to confront his past in the most unexpected way, and the shockwaves that ripple through the trial because of it. What happens next will leave everyone stunned, and you'll want to stick around to the very end to find out what the judge does when he's torn between justice and a long-lost friendship. In today's video, we'll dive into an incredible true story where a judge, upon recognizing his childhood friend as the defendant in a trial, faces an unimaginable moral dilemma. You'll learn about the rare moments in court where personal history collides with the law, how judges maintain impartiality in high-stakes trials, and the shocking twist that changed everything. Stay tuned, because what happens next might just change how you see the justice system. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when the judge finally makes his decision. As the defendant stands to address the court, the room holds its breath. But suddenly, the judge's expression changes. His eyes narrow as he watches the man before him speak, something about his voice, the way he moves. It's all too familiar. For a split second, the judge freezes. His face contorts confusion, quickly turning into disbelief. In that moment, the judge's mind races. He blinks and shakes his head, trying to dismiss the thought that has just crept in. But no, it's impossible to ignore. The man standing before him, facing serious charges, is someone he knew a long time ago, someone he once called a friend. A flood of memories rushes into the judge's mind. He remembers the summer days spent running through the neighborhood, the laughter echoing down the streets, the endless hours of play in the park. They were inseparable as children, sharing secrets, dreams, and promises of a future that felt so certain. They had been more than just friends. They had been brothers, bound by a bond forged in childhood. But time had changed them both. The judge is no longer the young, carefree boy he once was. He's now a man of law, sworn to uphold justice, no matter the cost. And yet, standing before him is the ghost of the past, his childhood friend, a person he once trusted without question. Could this really be the same person? The man standing in front of him now is unrecognizable, worn down by life in ways the judge could never have imagined. But beneath the hardened exterior, the judge still sees traces of that familiar face from years ago. The question gnaws at him. How did they get here? And more importantly, can he remain impartial when the person on trial is someone he once loved like a brother? The judge sits silently behind his bench, his hands clasped tightly, as he watches his childhood friend stand before him, accused of a crime that could ruin his life. His heart races, and his mind spins in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. On the one hand, he's a judge, a man of the law, sworn to uphold justice. His role is clear, impartial, neutral, and unwavering. He cannot afford to be swayed by personal feelings. But how can he ignore the deep history between them? This isn't just any defendant. It's a man who once shared the same playground, the same secrets, the same dreams. How can he separate the friend he once knew from the person accused of such serious charges? The judge fights with his conscience. He tells himself to focus on the facts, to remember that the law must be blind. But the memories of their youth keep flooding back, riding bikes down the street, talking for hours about their future and how nothing in the world could tear them apart. Could that bond really be gone? Could it be erased by the cold, hard reality of the courtroom? He wonders if the friendship he once cherished has now become a burden. The stakes are high, and he knows it. If he is even the slightest bit biased, the trial could be compromised. Lives are on the line, not just the defendants, but potentially others as well. But the weight of the law looms large. He knows that justice must prevail no matter the personal cost. If the defendant is guilty, the judge's duty is to see him convicted. The law doesn't bend for anyone, not even for old friends. But that thought, that simple truth, feels cold in his heart. What if his friend is guilty? Could he live with the knowledge that his impartiality failed him, that his decision wasn't as objective as it should have been? The line between justice and personal feelings grows ever thinner as the trial moves forward. The judge tries to focus, but he cannot shake the feeling that his personal history with the defendant is affecting his judgment. Should he recuse himself from the case? The idea is tempting, but what would that say about him? What would that do to the defendant, who may need every advantage he can get in this trial? The judge's role is to be a protector of fairness, but fairness in this case seems increasingly out of reach. His thoughts are interrupted by the sound of the defendant speaking again, but it's as if he's hearing it from a distance. The courtroom noise fades away, replaced by the echo of his memories. The friendship he once had, the betrayal, he now feels the guilt that is beginning to gnaw at him. It all becomes overwhelming. Can he continue down this path, upholding the law without letting the past cloud his judgment? The courtroom falls silent as the judge stands motionless, staring down at the defendant. Time seems to stretch as his mind wrestles with the monumental decision he faces. Every instinct tells him to do what he has always done: be a judge, be impartial. But his emotions are pulling him in a completely different direction. The defendant, his childhood friend, stands there pleading for mercy. The words ring in the judge's ears, but they don't just come from the defendant. They seem to come from his past, as well from the person he once was, someone who trusted this man with his life. After what feels like an eternity, the judge takes a deep breath. His hands tremble ever so slightly as he glances down at the gavel. The moment is almost suffocating, each second heavier than the last. He forces himself to look at the defendant one last time, searching his face, hoping to find some sign that everything will be okay, that he isn't about to make the biggest mistake of his career. But the memories of their past life together are like a fog clouding his vision, making it harder to separate the man before him from the friend he once knew. With a slow exhale, the judge brings the gavel down, calling for the trial to proceed. But it's not just the sound of the gavel that fills the room. It's the palpable shift in the atmosphere. The energy in the courtroom changes in an instant. The attorneys exchange confused glances, the weight of the moment settling on them. There's something off, but no one can put their finger on it. The tension in the air is thick, like a storm is brewing, but no one knows where the lightning will strike. The jury, sitting silently, seems restless. Their eyes dart nervously between the judge and the defendant, sensing that something is wrong, but unsure of what. Their unease is visible: slight fidgeting, tense shoulders, glances that linger just a bit too long. The defendant, too, feels it. His once confident posture now seems more fragile. There's a sense that the judge, the one person who should be the embodiment of fairness and justice, is somehow different. His gaze keeps flickering, his judgment uncertain, and that uncertainty makes everyone in the room feel it too. No one knows what's going on inside the judge's mind. The attorneys can't figure out why he hesitated, why he looked so conflicted. Was it simply a moment of weakness, or is something deeper at play? The prosecutor and defense attorney continue their arguments, but they're both keenly aware that the dynamics have shifted. The judge is still there, physically still in control of the room, but emotionally, mentally, something feels off. As the trial moves forward, the impact is undeniable. The judge's inner struggle is now a heavy presence in the room, and everyone feels it. But the question remains: how will this subtle shift in the judge's behavior affect the course of the trial? And more importantly, will it affect the truth? The trial moves forward, the tension in the room steadily building as each piece of evidence is presented, each witness called to the stand. But something is off, an undercurrent of uncertainty that no one can quite place. The judge, though doing his best to maintain composure, seems increasingly distracted. His eyes flicker occasionally toward the defendant, his childhood friend, and for a moment it feels as though the past and present are colliding in the most unexpected of ways. Then, just as the trial reaches its peak, the moment everyone has been waiting for arrives. The defense attorney presents a key piece of evidence, something that could change everything. It's a letter one that had been sent years ago, long before the trial even began. A letter that had been buried in a box of forgotten memories hidden away for years. But when it's read aloud in the courtroom, a murmur ripples through the crowd. The words are simple, yet they carry a weight far heavier than anyone could have anticipated. The letter contains a confession one that links the defendant to the crime in question. At first, it seems like a damning piece of evidence. The confession seems clear, direct, and undeniable. But as the judge listens intently, his face pales. His grip tightens on the gavel as the memories flood back. He recognizes the handwriting. It's the same handwriting from their childhood, the same notes they once passed in class, the same words he had once read with a sense of innocence. This revelation hits him like a freight train, and in that moment, everything shifts. The judge stands frozen, the words of the confession now echoing in his mind. Was this just a coincidence? Could the defendant have written this letter years ago, unaware of the connection it would have to the crime he's now accused of? Or is there something deeper at play? Could the defendant's past, the friendship they shared, hold the key to understanding the truth? As the defense attorney finishes reading the letter, the courtroom is plunged into a stunned silence. No one knows what to make of it. The jury shifts uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging confused glances. The prosecution has no idea how to respond, as this new evidence, while shocking, doesn't seem to fit neatly into their case. But for the judge, the revelation is both a professional and personal bombshell. Could his childhood memories, once a distant part of his past, now be influencing his judgment in ways he never anticipated? As the judge looks at the defendant now sitting with his head bowed, a new layer of doubt settles in. The past, once something he thought he had moved on from, is now back in full force. Could the defendant's confession be a reflection of the man he once knew, or is it a deliberate attempt to manipulate the situation? The judge pauses, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on him. The court waits in suspense, unsure of what will happen next. Will the judge use this revelation to uncover the truth, or will his emotional connection to the defendant cloud his judgment? The answers seem unclear, and as the trial draws to a close, one thing is certain: the outcome is no longer as straightforward as it seemed. The question remains, did the judge's personal connection to the defendant alter the course of the trial? And more importantly, what happens next? Will the truth ever come to light, or will the judge's past stand in the way of justice? In the end, the judge faces a choice that will haunt him for the rest of his life. The past and the present collide in the most unexpected way, leaving him torn between his loyalty to a childhood friend and his duty to the law. In this battle between personal connection and justice, only one can emerge victorious. As the trial nears its conclusion, the judge must decide whether his past will influence his judgment or if he will rise above it to deliver the impartial verdict the law demands. But the real question remains: was justice served, or did the past shape the future in ways no one could have predicted? What would you do in this situation? Can personal history and emotions ever be truly separated from a professional duty? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more shocking courtroom stories. Your engagement helps us bring more of these fascinating and thought-provoking tales straight to you.